Hello everyone. Welcome back. Today, we've got some crucial news you don't want to miss. Let's dive right into the top financial headlines and break down what's happening. Today's top stories are inflation and the Fed's next move. We've got two major updates from the Wall Street Journal today. First up, inflation continues to cool. The Fed's preferred inflation gauge showed signs of easing in August. According to the report, the Personal Consumption Expenditures (PCE) price index rose by 2.2% in August, slightly below economists' expectations of 2.3%. This is a drop from the 2.5% increase in July. When you strip out the more volatile food and energy prices, the core PCE rose by 2.7%, which was right in line with forecasts. The takeaway? Inflation is steadily moving toward the Federal Reserve's 2% target, and the trend appears solid. So, what does Wall Street think of all this? Well, the journal suggests that this positive data could pave the way for further interest rate cuts from the Federation. In other words, there's less standing in the way of the Fed lowering rates again. The second report digs deeper into a more cautious view. While the Fed may be cutting rates, that doesn't necessarily guarantee a soft landing for the US economy. Even with lower borrowing costs, many businesses might still feel the squeeze. Here's how the journal breaks it down. Whether the Fed's rate cuts help the economy depends in part on how deep the underlying economic weaknesses go. Success hinges on whether cheaper borrowing will boost investment and spending enough to offset a slowdown. Fed Chair Jerome Powell's recent 50 basis point rate cut was painted as a proactive move to avoid having to make bigger cuts later if things worsen. Powell emphasized that the Fed isn't falling behind and sees the cut as a way of staying ahead of potential issues. However, the journal cautions that Powell's optimism might not always be spot on. A smooth economic landing, where inflation hits the Fed's target without triggering major job losses, could still be tricky. Bank lending has almost ground to a halt over the past year, something rare outside of a recession. Even with rate cuts, many businesses and households might shy away from borrowing due to the still high rates compared to loans they locked in years ago. So, what's the journal's underlying message? While inflation data looks encouraging, the Fed shouldn't get too comfortable. Current benchmark rates are still historically high, and even gradual rate cuts might not be enough to spur new loans or investments. Without that, the impact of further rate reductions could be minimal. It's easy to read between the lines here. The journal is essentially urging the Fed to consider even bigger rate cuts. There's a broad consensus on Wall Street that two more cuts are coming this year, one in November and another in December. Each is expected to be 25 basis points. But for investors and the markets, that might not be enough to really move the needle. My take? Even when the numbers look good, financial media like the Wall Street Journal rarely focuses on the positive. It's all about finding the downside because, for Wall Street, amplifying risks often leads to bigger rewards. But that kind of watchdog mentality, driven by profit, is far better than a lack of scrutiny. In the end, expect Wall Street to keep the pressure on the Fed for bigger rate cuts as we head toward November. The second important piece of news we're sharing today is about Japan's election of a new leader for the Liberal Democratic Party, LDP, and the country's next prime minister. Former Defense Minister Shigeru Ishiba has been elected as the new president of Japan's Liberal Democratic Party, and he will be taking on the role of Japan's next prime minister. Let's break down two key reports on this significant event. First, let's look at Bloomberg's coverage. Bloomberg's headline reads, "Japan's new leader made his career as an anti-ape." The focus of this article is on Ishiba's political stance and his position within Japanese politics. Bloomberg describes him as a maverick who has long been on the sidelines of the ruling party. Now, he's stepping into the spotlight, marking a surprising shift in Japan's leadership. The article highlights that the LDP, which has largely held power since World War II, faced one of its most diverse leadership races yet. With 9 candidates representing various political factions within the party, Ishaiba emerged victorious in a hotly contested election. Now, he must grapple with the challenges of leading a party that's facing credibility issues after years of scandals. The article contrasts Ishaiba's image with that of his predecessors. Outgoing leader Fumio Kishida will be remembered for his role on the global stage, but criticized domestically for his inability to shake off scandals not of his making. Bloomberg points out that Japan's political scene has become weary of the LDP's revolving door of leadership, and Ishaiba's status as an outsider within the party might work to his advantage in this climate. One of the more interesting points is that Ishaiba's victory over Sanai Takeichi suggests a break from the policies of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Bloomberg notes that had Takeichi won, the party would have continued Abe's legacy. Instead, Ishaiba, who has spent much of his career opposing Abe's policies, is now in charge. Bloomberg also draws attention to Ishaiba's book, My Policies, My Destiny, where he describes himself as a conservative liberal in the mold of the short-lived but influential Prime Minister Townsend Ishiboshi. Much like Ishiboshi, Ishaiba has taken a more liberal stance on social issues, including his cautious support for legalizing same-sex marriage, though he downplayed this during the election. The article also points out that Ishaiba has spent years criticizing the traditional views within his own party, earning him the label of a traitor among some. But Bloomberg suggests that Ishaiba's outsider status has worked in his favor this time, as voters seem to be looking for change after years of scandal and instability. In closing, Bloomberg makes a subtle but telling comparison. While Ishaiba likens himself to Townsend Ishiboshi, Ishiboshi stepped down after just 2 months in office. Bloomberg's tone suggests they may not have high expectations for Ishaiba's long-term success. Now, let's look at the Wall Street Journal's take on this election. Their headline reads, Japan gets a new leader who wants to remake the US military alliance. The article focuses on how Ishaiba, who has run for leadership 5 times before, has been critical of the current US-Japan security treaty, calling it unequal. His leadership could signal tensions with Washington moving forward. Ishaiba, 67, narrowly won the LDP's leadership race on Friday, defeating Sanai Takeichi, who could have become Japan's first female prime minister. The article notes that Ishaiba faces unprecedented security challenges, including China's growing military power, North Korea's missile tests, and Russia's aggressive actions, such as flying military aircraft into Japanese airspace. At a press conference, Ishaiba emphasized that it's time to use his years of experience to protect Japan. He also differs from Takeichi on economic policy, supporting Japan Central Bank's recent interest rate hikes, which led to a strengthening yen and a drop in Japanese stock prices after his victory was announced. One dramatic twist mentioned in the article is that current Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's faction unexpectedly shifted its support to Ishaiba in the second round of voting, which helped secure his victory. The article also touches on Ishaiba's frustrations with what he views as an unequal US-Japan alliance. Both Abe and Kishida increased defense spending and deepened the US-Japan alliance without making significant changes to its structure. In contrast, Ishaiba has been vocal about his dissatisfaction with the asymmetry in the alliance. He has even suggested that if the US has military bases in Japan, Japan should be allowed to station troops on US soil, such as at American bases in Guam, an idea that is rather unique. The Wall Street Journal also highlights that Ishaiba's victory comes amid growing tensions in the Asia-Pacific region, and his stance on the US-Japan alliance could mark a significant shift in Japan's foreign policy. In summary, both American media outlets seem to have reservations about Ishaiba's leadership. Bloomberg paints a picture of him as a political outsider who has finally ascended to power but may face significant challenges. The Wall Street Journal, meanwhile, focuses on the potential for friction in US-Japan relations under his leadership. It will be interesting to see how Ishiba navigates these challenges and what direction he ultimately takes Japan in. But for now, it's clear that his leadership marks a departure from the Abe-era policies, and all eyes will be on how this impacts Japan's role on the world stage and its relationship with the US. The third key story we're sharing today is about the meeting between former President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky. According to a report by Bloomberg, titled "Trump Downplays Tensions with Zelensky, Vows to End War," the two leaders met at Trump Tower in New York to discuss possible solutions to the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. After the meeting, Trump told reporters that he learned a lot from the discussion, but his stance remains unchanged. He believes negotiations could quickly bring an end to the war. Speaking to Fox News, Trump said, "We all want to see an end to this. We all want to reach a fair deal. President Zelensky wants it to end as soon as possible. He's looking for a fair deal, too." This meeting followed a tense week in which both Trump and Zelensky had exchanged criticisms through the media, with Trump questioning US military aid to Ukraine. But today, Trump tried to strike a more cooperative tone, saying, "We'll be working closely with both sides to get this resolved. At some point, it has to end. Zelensky's been through hell." Despite the efforts to ease tensions, the atmosphere during the meeting was still clouded by the recent public exchanges. When asked why he chose to meet with Trump despite their disagreements, Zelensky gave a knowing smile, signaling the complexity of the situation. Interestingly, Trump also praised Zelensky for his role during Trump's first impeachment trial in 2019. Back then, Democrats had tried to get Zelensky to confirm that Trump pressured him to investigate Joe Biden in exchange for military aid. But Zelensky stayed out of the domestic political fray, and today Trump acknowledged that, saying, "He could have gone for the headlines, but he didn't. He's like steel. He never said I did anything wrong." Zelensky, after the meeting, spoke to reporters, reiterating his belief that the war shouldn't have happened in the first place. "Putin has killed so many people. We must do everything in our power to stop him," Zelensky said. For his part, Trump continues to insist that his relationship with Putin could bring the war to a swift end. "We had a very good relationship," Trump said. "If I win, I believe I could end this very quickly." While it's unlikely that this meeting will fully resolve their differences, it's at least a step forward from trading jabs in the media. Sitting down face to face is a positive move, and that alone might help cool some of the tension between them. That's all for today. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more updates. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.